Zalman, is it over? Zalman, is it over? Zalman.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a night of inspiration. In the name of all the shluchim and Boca Raton who have the schus to be the Rebbe's emissaries here in this city, the Rebbe inspired us to go out on shlichus, but we are all inspired by your inspiration and your response to the Rebbe's message. So tonight, Gimel Tammuz, as we leave the day of Gimel Tammuz, we'll hear from many of the shluchim here in Boca, but first and foremost, we'll hear from the Rebbe himself by a video that will be showing throughout this program. The Rebbe would always say, Peischim b'dvar malchus. We should always start with words of royalty. And what is Jewish royalty? The words of the Chachamim, the words of the Rebbe himself. So please listen carefully to the 4-minute video from the Rebbe on the meaning of this day, Gimel Tammuz.
Was kon der Zadig sehen und wissen, als hat memale gewöhnt Afkide, als hat aufgetan in der Richtung, zu welcher geschieht geworden in Welt,
die
Straße geführt.
Let's try that again. Give me 1 second.
You have to share the sound. You have to go
there was sound.
I heard the
Rabbi.
sound.
to share the sound.
We all heard we were hearing the sound, but
There was sound. We heard.
I heard the sound.
I'll try it again. Give me 1 second. I know I heard the sound as well, but I'm here.
I
Give
can't
me 1
even
second.
see.
Let's try it again.
I heard sound.
Was kon der Zadig sehen und wissen,
No sound.
als hat memale gewöhnt Afkide, als hat aufgetan in der Richtung, zu welcher geschieht geworden in Welt, ist Beschaße gefühlt sich an Schome beguf. Und beloschen Apostel Beschaße Jetze Venichnas. Als tot geht rein, der schreckt mit sich, fühlt mit sich, als verleiht.
Sound.
I hear sound.
Ist das noch nie der richtige Reihe, als hat Matzliach gewählt. Ich habe da der Linie von Istalkus Azadi, wo bei Emes in der Mitte ist, da wird sich wieder Baal Hailuli schreibt in dem Meimel, was gegeben werden, in dem Hailuli, in Bosnien. Ist nicht der Linie von Istalkus, aber geht weg, nur sie gehen weg,
Rabbi, where is
Grenzen
Can't
gehen.
hear it.
I have sound.
Dort demol der Eir
I
has
hear.
ewig, so dort demol tot die has Spor, choch mi zet ihr nit meine Bossor, mi darf nur aufstellen die Kehli, die Aufnahmsfähigkeit auf Aufnehmen seiner Spor. Wosi wie die Beloschna Gemore, ma zari bachai, ma fru bachai. Aber ich schaß mir sehr, als mir darf bringen eine Reihe wie sie 40 Huf Sare, wie sie 40 Huf seine Talmidi. Die, was haben sicher gewöhnt, haben ein Spur von ihm direkt oder durch seine Sforim oder durch seine Maimorim und unter dem haben wir gesagt, Azari Bachai, die Talmidim seiner Spur wirkt und sie ist lebendig, bis in ein Leben, als sie im Chaim. Sie macht lebendig herum sich, oder demult ist auf Huba Chaim. Die Gemorde darf nicht bringen, Kelai, als Janke, wie gewinnt bei Chaim Belam Habo, das redet sich, wenn ich Chaim Belam Hazeh. Oder demult ist auf Huba Chaim, oder demult ist allein Echid bei Chaim Belam Hazeh, der Adrabe. Sie bejesser seis und bejesser eis, als seht, was die, was einen gewähren, Sare, Bechaim, Chayose, Bealmodei, seine Mamschich und setzen vor, die Stadlus, auf versprechten Jahadus, Idischkeit, Teru und Mitzvah. Und auf Tondos mit Anefen, Bedarke Neam und Bedarke Scholem, aber mit dem Teike von Amiti, mit der Emesse Starkheit und mit Anefen auf nicht mitwerden, Tondos einmal und ein zweiten Mal, wie viel Mal sie wird verleihen, bis wann es eine sichere Sache als Mismatzliach oder demult ist Afuhuba Chayim. Sie den Uvigiret kam auf Piyomim, als demult ist allein dort zusammen mit die, was bleiben sich zusammen. Und es mäßig kehr durch den Teilung, was mir verschafft, der nicht schon. Es bencht und bemeile echt mäßig kehr in die Gashmis und Beruchnis, was hat das Scheich ist zu sehen, Bichlal. Und befragt mäßig kehr in der Avedo, in der Schlich ist. Auf versprechend Jüdischkeit und Teru und Mitzvah und Zedek wie Jesher. Jeder Bechol Mokim Shiodi Magas und wie gerät früher, wenn er geht zu degen alle Dames bei sich in Huis, wenn er geht zu der ganzen Stadt, in welcher er lebt, wenn er geht zu der ganzen Medina.
Rabbi Denberg. Rabbi Denberg. Where's Rabbi Denberg? Rabbi Denberg.
I'm trying to unmute. Okay, there you go. I am now unmuted. L'chaim, everybody, l'chaim. And thank you for joining us. And thank you for joining us on this very, very special occasion. An occasion that marks the Rebbe's leadership and continued leadership that allows us to be able to be here in Boca Raton amongst so many rabbis and so many institutions. I grew up in a family that was religious, and from my father's side, Lubavitch. But both my mother and my father are products of the war. And as such, like many, many Jewish parents, they wanted something better for their children. Certainly when it came to our Jewish education, they sent us to yeshiva, but they imagined that when it would come to having a family and their livelihood, that this would be something they would be acquiring from some of the more normal professions out there in life. A doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, in business, as my father himself was in business. And I'm the youngest of four. And the previous three brothers, two certainly were going into business. One, the one just above me, was going into the rabbinate, something that my parents, for some reason, always thought he was perfectly suited for. But growing up in Chabad and going away at a younger age and going to yeshivas that were not only yeshivas, but were also planted in communities and countries where you had continuous engagement with the community, and growing up in the courtyard of the Rebbe, something began to happen. And, excuse me. It was simply this, that the Rebbe, for those that attended on a continuous basis, certainly gave us the impression that he was trying to grow an army of young, and I say the word rabbis loosely, although the Rebbe wanted all of us to be rabbis, but from young soldiers that were prepared to go and find their life's missions in communities all over the world, where they could be a constant influence on the Jews that they live amongst. So if they needed kosher, help provide for them kosher. They need a shul, provide a shul. They need Jewish education, provide Jewish education. And this idea of sending shluchim out was nothing novel to the Rebbe, but it certainly was something that the Rebbe was capable of maximizing in a way that previous Chabad leaders had never seen. And so I can't say my parents were all that happy in the beginning. Like I said, they probably imagined that this would not be a life that would be filled with luxury and things would be easy, even though there's no guarantee in whatever profession you enter. But it was something that I knew that the Rebbe wanted those that grew up in his Dalet Amos, in his 4 cubit feet, that this was something, if they could feel passionate about, was something they should pursue. And I told my father and my mother that you sent me to yeshivas that from the young age of 17 already, I felt the excitement of putting tefillin on with people, hearing them wanting to buy their own pair. You gave me the opportunity to feel the impact and influence that you could have on children attending an overnight camp with the only Jewish interaction that they had all year long, and the impression it made upon them to wear a kippah for the first time, to engage in kosher for the first time. It made me realize, as the Rebbe would continuously point out to us, that our interaction with Jews in those communities was all sometimes that were needed in order to engage and ignite the Jewish spark in their Jewish neshama. And 30 years ago, we're soon going to hear from my fellow shliach and director of Chabad in Boca Raton. We were given the opportunity to begin Chabad here in Boca. So it's like anything else people talk about. Follow something that you could be passionate about. And the Rebbe instilled a passion of Ahavas Yisrael, loving Jews, and being there for them. Because as much work and as much effort as it takes, the satisfaction that you have and the knowledge that you have, that you are simply engaging people in a way that changes not only their lives, but the face of the Jewish people until the coming of Mashiach. And I feel a big schus, a big merit, as I'm sure all my fellow shluchim do, that we were given the opportunity to do this amazing work. And now I would like to introduce someone I already mentioned, my fellow partner who came on Shlichus with me 30 years ago, Rabbi Zalman Bucket.
Thank you, Rabbi Denberg, for your words of inspiration. Rabbi Denberg and I came out 30 years ago, as he mentioned. We came out as young couples. Rabbi Denberg and his wife, Rivka, Rabbi Rivka, and my wife, Rivka too, Rabbi Rivka, Chana Rivka. We came out and Boca didn't look like it looks like today, 30 years ago. It looked a little different. The roads look different. Physically, it looked different, and spiritually, it looked different. It's changed. It's a changed Boca what it was 30 years ago. But the first thing we did as shluchim here in the city, the first thing that we did before even we had any shul established, the first thing that we established here in Boca Raton was a Talmud Torah on Piccadilly Square, on top of the Jewish Exchange. We started off with a Talmud Torah that was on Sunday and Tuesday and on Thursday. Sunday morning, Tuesday, and Thursday evening. And a lot of those graduates of that Talmud Torah on Piccadilly Square are, their children have already taught Talmud Torah. And many of them actually have gone on to even greater levels of Yiddishkeit in their own lives. And the truth is, that I believe that we started the Talmud Torah because the importance to the Rebbe of Jewish education.
Rabbi Kramer, highlight Rabbi Bucket, please, so we can see him.
Because the Rebbe loved, and we all know that Rebbe inspired us to learn Torah. Not only to learn Torah ourselves, but to learn Torah with others. So I myself, my father was the Rosh Hashiva in Lubavitch Yeshiva, and I'm a son of the youngest of 8 children, 5 elderly brothers, and 3 sisters. And I went to the Farbrangens. I remember going to the Farbrangens of the Rebbe when I was even a young child, a 9-year-old child. And I was enthralled with the Rebbe, not that I understood what he was saying, because I saw my brothers and my father, how excited they were in the teachings and the way that Rebbe taught, and the way that Rebbe wanted that we should learn Torah, and the way that Rebbe wanted in the attitude of our learning Torah. And as I got older and I went myself to Farbrangens, I was inspired by that concept. And from a young age, I can say, I wanted to become a educator in Yiddishkeit, to become a shliach, to become an emissary of the Rebbe, to reach out to Jews through the limud Torah, through the learning of Torah. And I remember the Rebbe once said by Farbrangen that we're going to take in the world through limud Torah. We're going to change the world through the learning of Torah. That's the way we're going to ultimately change the world, is through education. And you have to go out to the city, wherever you're going out to, and you have to learn Torah with your people. If you need to teach them an aleph, learn with them an aleph. If you need to learn with them a pasuk of chumash, learn with them a pasuk of chumash. If you need to teach children, teach children. If you need to teach adults, teach adults. And that inspired me. And that's what we have done for the last 30 years in the aspect of adult education and children's education. And even in shul, the point was that they will hear some words of Torah and be inspired by words of Torah. Because the Rebbe stood for Torah. The Rebbe, his whole life was giving over the aspects of the learning of Torah and how it affects every human being and even affects us. And he told us as shluchim that by us learning Torah with others, we will gain in our own Torah. And that has proven 100% correct, because we have learned with many, but you have taught us more by us learning with you. So I thank you. I thank the Rebbe for the schus that he gave my wife and I and all the shluchim here in Boca Raton and all the shluchim throughout the world, that he gave us a schus to be able to reach out to people, to be with people, to educate people, and that should be the journey of our life. And it's been an unbelievable journey for the last 30 years. And we, Baruch Hashem, in the aspects of learning of Torah, we never stopped. We grew, We went from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Chabadas, from two rabbis to 10 rabbis here in the city. And Torah never ends, and we hope to continue to grow and give the Rebbe nachas, joy in the learning of Torah, in the way the Jews get involved in learning of Torah here in Boca Raton. The Rebbe would always sing this song that we're going to hear in a moment on the yard side of his father-in-law on the 10th day of Shvat. It was a song, Tzamalacha Nafshi. It's an expression of David HaMelech, how he expresses his desire in connecting to God and learning of Torah. It's in chapter 63 of Psalms, the second verse, where it says, my soul thirsts for you. My flesh longs for you. I feel like I'm in a desolate and dry land without water. And the truth is, throughout the years, we've seen the Yidden, Jews, thirsty for learning. And until today, we are inspired by you and your thirst of learning. And it inspires us to even learn more and learn more. So my friends, you can sing together with the Rebbe in his song of Tzamalacha Nafshi, which is on chapter 63 in Psalms, verse number 2.
Tzamalacha nafshi, komalacha besori, be'eretz Yahweh beli moyi. Came back kodesh chazi sicha liroi suscho uchvoidecho. Came back kodesh chazi sicha lirois uschoch voidecho.
Good evening, everyone. A number of years ago, Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz was asked to describe what he considered to be the Rebbe's greatest legacy. Rabbi Steinsaltz answered, he said, the Rebbe didn't leave a legacy, the Rebbe left marching orders. Now, we were asked to share tonight something personal, a personal inspiration from the Rebbe. So I would like to focus on what I would consider to be the Rebbe's marching orders for all of us. Now, I want to start by saying that the ultimate marching orders of the Rebbe are to prepare ourselves, to prepare our families, and to prepare everyone around us to greet Mashiach. But how do we get there? So there is a common misconception, a fallacy, and that is that many people would say, and I Googled this before to see what Google would say, how many shluchim does the Rebbe have? And the number that it would show is something like 5,000 or a little bit under 5,000 shluchim around the world. And many people speak about the many couples, the many shluchim that the Rebbe inspired, the couples all around the world, reaching out to fellow Jews, helping them in need spiritually and physically. It is not true. The truth is that every person must know that the Rebbe considers them a shliach. The Rebbe stressed that every single human being has a shlichus. Now, I don't only mean the type of shlichus that every one of us has to assist a Chabad rabbi in their activities. I'm referring to every individual's own activities, every individual's own mission and own shlichus and own role. Now, to explain what it means to be a shliach, I'd like to take a few moments to study together a particular theme found throughout the Rebbe's teachings, which Rabbi Buket spoke about the Rebbe's teachings. So I want to speak about a particular theme that we find throughout the Rebbe's teachings that I think will help us understand what it means that every single one of us is a shaliach. So let us focus on a particular and specific example. The example is as follows. In many places where the Luchos Habris, the two tablets of the covenant, are depicted, the two tablets that Moshe Rabbeinu brought down from Mount Sinai, so you'll notice that in many places they're depicted with rounded tops, round tablets. You could check anywhere. It's in traditional places, in Orthodox places, and non-Orthodox places. And many times that's the way the tablets are portrayed. However, you'll notice that in Chabad publications and books, it is always depicted as square, never as round. And it's actually interesting to point out that it's something that the Rebbe was very careful about, to the extent that once when the children's magazine called the Mashiach Times sent the Rebbe a draft for an upcoming issue, on which the cover of that issue, there was a drawing of children kissing a Torah scroll. The Rebbe wrote as follows. The Rebbe wrote, I'll say it in Hebrew, these are the words the Rebbe wrote, and then I'll translate. Kedai lenatzel ha'izdamnus, it would be appropriate to use this opportunity to depict square luchos, so the children should know that the luchos were not round, but that they were square. The tablets were not round, they were square tablets. Now, what's the big deal? Round tablets, square tablets, what's this all about? So there are 2 points. Number one, simple, accuracy. The Talmud, the Gemara in Tractate Bava Basra, describes how these tablets that Moses brought were placed into the Aron Habris, into the Ark, in the tabernacle, in the Mishkan, and explaining how every space was used in the Aron, in the Ark. And if it was round, then obviously it wouldn't fill the space. If it was round, then there would be empty space. So, number one, accuracy. According to the Torah, according to the Talmud, in other words, the authentic Jewish tradition is that the tablets were square. But then there's a second point why the Rebbe was so adamant about square luchos, about square tablets, that really is much deeper. And that is that if, as I said before, if you're going to say that the tablets were round, you're basically saying that in the ark there was empty space. And that is a no-no. To say that there would be holy space in the ark that is empty, not being utilized, not being maximized, for the Rebbe, that would be the worst thing. Untapped potential, gifts that God gives us that are not being maximized, that would be a chutzpah. So for the Rebbe, round luchos represent really empty space of holiness, unused space in the ark. And the Rebbe would not allow that. You see, because the Rebbe taught us in his teachings and also in his own life to see every person, every talent, every moment, and every object really as being indispensable and having an indispensable role in making this world a godly place. You know, just to point out that the Rebbe in his own life would use everything till the end. They say the Rebbe used a pencil. The Rebbe wouldn't use it halfway and then start a new one. The Rebbe would go till the end. And lots of the Rebbe's notes are written on scrap pieces of paper because there cannot be empty space. Everything must be utilized for a godly purpose. Every one of us has a godly purpose, our own purpose that, again, is indispensable. It's a vital role in this world, in the purpose of creation. It is a vital role in bringing Mashiach. The Rebbe actually pointed to something very interesting, that when we all recognize that every one of us is a shaliach, the Rebbe pointed to the numerical value of the word shaliach. Shaliach, shin lamed yud ches in Hebrew, so the numerical value is 348. And when each one of us, we use each one of our 10 faculties, which are our 10 gifts from God, each one of us, our unique talents, then we add 10 and we have Mashiach. From Shliach comes Mashiach. When we all realize that each one of us is a Shliach, and when we use our potential, and when we maximize our abilities, each one in our own way, that is what it means to bring Mashiach. Now, this idea is true at all times, but especially during these extraordinary times. We must see ourselves as agents in bringing kindness, in bringing happiness, in fact, in bringing godliness to this world. Obviously, by reaching out to people around us, but also in our own space, in our own home, making our own lives a godly life. That makes Mashiach out of Shaliach. These are what I would consider the Rebbe's marching orders, that we all see ourselves, everyone and everything, as vital in bringing about a better world, in bringing about Mashiach. Now, we see this in many areas of the Rebbe's approach. We see it in the Rebbe's approach to elderly. We see this in the Rebbe's approach to businessmen. We see this in the Rebbe's approach to scholars. And we see this in the Rebbe's approach to children, even very young children. The Rebbe saw every single one as a shaliach in bringing Mashiach and in making the world a better place and really bringing the purpose of creation. And with that, I'd like to introduce the coming video of the Rebbe interacting with children.
ברכה לסבא שלי. נו, תגיד, כמובן, תגיד.
שיהיה לטוב שלי. רפואה שלמה, החלמה מהירה ברוך החולים.
אמן.
תודה.
סבבה.
כדאי תגיד כל יוגדר.
What did you say?
I don't want any more bad dreams.
Sie wollen nicht gemerken, schlechte Chaleimes.
Ask your mother to check the mezuzah in your room.
Okay.
That will help you Chaleimes. Your dreams. Thank you. Thank you very much. How come you have so much money?
What do you say?
Thank you, Rabbi.
Think for yourself.
Quick, very quickly. What do you want to tell them? That's enough. That's enough.
God Almighty bless you.
Think for yourself.
I have your picture in my home.
So much is what I've managed to buy is your line. Thank you, Rabbi.
I was in Israel.
Thank you very much. In Tvari?
Was it the Rebbe?
Yeah. You brought the picture. You brought to put the pictures.
Thank you.
זה בשבילי, הצלחה רבה ותודה רבה. את רוצה הבאת את זה?
את הבאת את זה בשביל הרבי.
זה בשביל המתנה.
היא עוד.
זה בשביל המתנה. את מביאה את המתנה הזו.
Hello, everyone. Rabbi Kramer, could you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly.
Okay, this is a tough act to follow after Rabbi Denberg, Rabbi Bucket, Rabbi Vovovsky, but we're going to try our best. So I was asked to speak a little personally, and I'll just speak a little bit about my upbringing and how the Rebbe continues to inspire me today. I don't know if everyone knows me. My name is Yossi Denberg, and I'm Rabbi Denberg's son from Chabad Central Boca. And let me just give you a little bit of what it was like for me to grow up in a Chabad family in Boca Raton. We grew up with the natural feeling of giving to others. I learned how to become a secretary from around 5, 6 years old. When someone would call the house and say, "Is the rabbi there?" I'd say, "Give me 1 second, please. I'll call him right now." "Is the Rebbetzin there?" "Sure. Just wait 1 moment, please. I'll put you on hold." A lot of scars on my fingers from running the popcorn machines by the Simcha Beis HaShoeva with Yossi Bucket. I won't show to demonstrate. Growing up not shy because we would stand outside in polo shops, getting a 10th for the Friday night minyan. These were all things that were just normal, that all 6, 7-year-old children did. I mean, what else do 7-year-olds do if not for Friday night standing out in the polo shops asking people if they're Jewish and if they would like to join the minyan? This was just regular. When a sister of mine went to high school in Beis Rivka in Crown Heights and stayed by a family of relatives of ours, I asked her, "So what's it like living in someone else's house? What's the difference between our house?" And she said, "I never realized what a public life we live. It's just after hours. It's just their family, and it's like by us, it's it's the shul, the whole. It's just like there's one big, mess." Growing up, we obviously knew of the Rebbe. As a young child, I would say that the Rebbe was like a beloved Zayda that we were taught about. It was just natural. A young child doesn't necessarily know how he's related to their grandfather or to their grandmother. The Rebbe was a special rabbi in our life. Growing up, I don't think I knew too much beyond that. But as I grew a little older, 8, 9, 10, 11, and started to go to sleepaway camp with other Chabad boys my age, and I started to join my father for the International Convention of Shluchim every year in Crown Heights in Brooklyn, the seat of the Chabad movement. I started to become more aware of why we're in Boca Raton. I started to realize that the Rebbe encouraged his Hasidim to go out and make an impact, even if it means not living in a comfortable Jewish setting and the Hasidic neighborhood of Crown Heights, and to go out to places that need you to spread Yiddishkeit there. And even if they're not knocking on your doors and saying, "Rabbi, we would like to hire you," you go out and you find and make an impact. And then I realized why the boys who I met in camp were eating regular bread after Pesach. And growing up in Boca, I was eating tam-tams for my peanut butter and jelly sandwiches in school for the next 10 days after Pesach. I thought that was regular. It takes time for the bread to come from New York. Or maybe that's why I have trauma today of, a fresh milk, because by the time my father would bring the milk from Miami, stop in a hospital, put on tefillin in someone's office, the milk always had these interesting curdles inside. And I realized that this was specific that we lived there. This wasn't because of our nice house with a pool. We didn't have a pool, although we did have a nice house. But this was because my father and mother decided to be part of the Rebbe's army of Shluchim. And so growing up, I would say until Bar Mitzvah, I started to feel very proud that I too am part of this army. Not an army that, God forbid, wreaks havoc or even defends from war, but a proactive army in spreading goodness and kindness to the wider community and in sparking the Jewish spark within the Jewish community. Going to yeshiva really solidified our growing up education by being introduced to the study of Chassidus and really understanding the deeper meaning of why we learn Torah and why we're so occupied with doing mitzvos. And then we got introduced to the Rebbe. We got introduced to the Rebbe. And not only as children of Shluchim, but as students ourselves. I would say that really, without being able to physically see the Rebbe when I was in yeshiva, the Rebbe passed away when I was 5, 6 years old. But yet I could say we considered ourselves students from the Rebbe. We started reading his talks in Likutei Sichos. We started watching videos of him. We started picking up on Yiddish to understand the Rebbe better. On Friday afternoons, when we had our yeshiva classes over at noon, we were encouraged to not just hang around in the dormitory and take a shower and get ready for Shabbos, but to get on the Red Line in Chicago and go downtown to find Jews and to encourage them to add in mitzvos. I used to go to Michigan Avenue, one of the biggest avenues in the entire Chicago, and Oak Street, a very fashionable district in the fashion district of Chicago. And we 14, 15-year-olds would walk into offices, knock on doors and say, "Could we speak to Mr. Cohen? We saw that his name is outside on the office." "Yes, what is your name? What time was your appointment?" "We don't really have an appointment, but we really have to speak to him. It's very important though." "You have to speak to Mr. What do you have? Please, we need a couple of minutes with Mr. Cohen." And this is what we used to do time and time again. And we realized that what we have, even as 14, 15-year-olds, if we wanted to go out and make an impact because we knew we could. If we could, we should. You know the joke of Lubavitcher Yeshiva Bacher is in the elevator in Manhattan, and all of a sudden he's on the 44th floor, and in walks a businessman and another Yeshiva Bacher. And the Yeshiva Bacher says to the Yeshiva Bacher who just entered, "What are you doing in my building? I have the top 20 floors, 40 through 60. And he says, "I'm not going to 40 through 60. I'm on the 70th and 80th, 70 and 80th floors." He said, "Okay, good." And the businessman says, "I've been trying to rent a space there. Do you really own those floors?" He says, No. We just visit the businessman to wrap the strap." So getting a little older, you know, the Rebbe once said by a Simchas Torah gathering to Israeli ambassadors and generals who would visit there, and he pointed to the crowd of Bachrim and he said, "My generals are under 20. In 770, when we were even old, I would say that my formative years in 14, 15, 16, 17, by the time I was 17, I knew that we had a different mission in life and we were empowered to do it. In Yeshiva in 770, we would stand outside public schools, convincing mothers by pickup to enroll in the release time program, which is a national governmental law mandating schools to release children the last hour of Wednesdays, if they so choose, to a nearby religious institution to learn about the religion and tradition. And that's what we would do. It wasn't the funnest to stand outside PS 195 in Manhattan Beach convincing moms in the cold midwinter months of November, December, January to enroll their children. But we would do that because, as Rabbi Bucket mentioned, we realized the importance of Torah study. And as my father mentioned, we realized the impact it could have on that child. You know, most people, when they want to, you know, settle down with a family, and Baruch Hashem, after I got married and was thinking about how to settle my family, you know, most people want to say, there's words you hear like dream job, dream home, how could I retire fastest? You know, those words never really, you know, they didn't really, you know, they weren't exciting. And I'm not speaking out of righteousness. I'm not speaking out of greatness. I'm speaking about it because these words were just foreign. Of course, I could get lazy and disinterested, etc. But when it's about an important decision of what I'm going to do with my life, I'm not aiming towards a dream job in a dream neighborhood and follow all the signs that say, thinking about retirement, talk to us today, and Merrill Lynch or Bank of America. This wasn't for me. I'm not trying to live to make my life most easiest. I am trying to live to see how I could be most impactful. And so when Rabbi Bucket and Rabbi Denberg reached out to me 5 years ago, asking if my wife and I would like to move to help out with the activities in Chabad of Boca, specifically trying to cater towards the post-bar and bar mitzvah boys and girls, and try to connect them by creating a network with different programs throughout the city and schools in multiple locations. We said, yeah. Did I think I was the teen guy? It didn't really make a difference, because if this was needed, then as the Rebbe taught us, the Jew is waiting to be inspired. All you have to do is just dig a little deep and you will be able to wake them up. The Rebbe taught us that success will surely come if you are doing the right thing, if you are doing God's work. Yagaiti umotsasi taimen. If I toil and then I succeeded, that's a statement you could believe. But if you toil, you will succeed. And again, these were like obvious mantras that we just live with. Of course it's going to be great. We're doing the best thing on earth. And it could be challenging at some times. I had visited as a yeshiva bacher far out communities in Germany, Poland, and Finland. And over there, when you met a Jew, it was easy to spark the neshama. But in Boca, where there are so many Jews, and it's not as novel to see a rabbi or a Jew with a yarmulke, it would be perhaps even more challenging to spark the yid within. I mean, the rabbis yesterday asked me to end off with a personal story. So, you know, anybody ever rode the New York subway before? Yeah. So lately, there's been, you know, signs that say, if you see something, say something. But like the Rebbe taught us, if you see something, do something. So I was driving down Jog Road, right where I was driving down Jog Road on Friday afternoon, and I noticed that there's a large group of teenagers exiting into Regency Court, right by Woodfield Country Club, on the southwestern corner of Yamato and Jog. And I realized that this was dismissal from Spanish River High School. Now again, with our Chabad mentality, if I am the Chabad rabbi supposed to be gearing my efforts and energy towards teenagers, this spot is probably where I should be. Where else should I be on Friday 250, if not where I see a bunch of teenagers walking? And so I, in classical Manhattan style, made a little sign and a booth and set my shop up together with my wife and young baby right there on the corner of Jog Road and Yamato, ready for the light to turn red, so I could be able to handle all the teenagers that are going to come running right up to my booth. Well, it wasn't so successful the first week because I don't think anybody knew exactly what I was going. You're Jewish, come do a mitzvah. It was foreign. But we don't give up. We know that this mission is sacred and we have to be shining lights for people when they don't have that opportunity. I went through the next week and one boy stopped by and he said, "What's going on?" I said, "Are you Jewish?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "What's your name?" He said, "James." I said, "James? You're Jewish? Come on. What type of Jewish boy is named James?" He said, "I have a Hebrew name. It's Chaim David." I said, "Now we're talking. Come, let's put on tefillin." And he put on tefillin. And we put it on tefillin with him that week, the next week, and then it didn't seem so successful again. So I thought about perhaps taking a break. I already met Chaim David. I don't know if there's anyone else who's interested. So I took a break for 1 week. I get an email from his mother who I had met, I think on the second week after I had met Chaim David, and she said, "Where were you? My son James was waiting for you." Thank you, Rabbi Moshe Kramer, who comes with me most Fridays. And Baruch Hashem, we've been going a couple of times, stopped after birth of a baby for a little bit, maybe, perhaps. But Baruch Hashem, we've been going most weeks. And let me tell you a story which happened a year later at that same challah corner. And although Baruch Hashem, we've had a tremendous success of reaching teenagers who literally would not have been there, literally would not have come to a program, and you got to bring the program to them. It was the first week of school last year, and I was standing there all ready to go, and it was very exciting. We had a lot of people stop by, and there was a boy. The boy's name was Mitchell, and he stopped by. I didn't know his name at the time. He put on tefillin, which was already surprising because someone has to be very brave to put on in public. And I noticed that after the first shift of kids, he was still standing at the booth, which is unusual. Usually they move on to the parking lot to catch their ride. And after the third shift, he continued to stand there. And I said, "Yo, you're not supposed to be doing this. You're supposed to stop by the booth and keep on walking." And he said, "You know, my dad just passed away this past summer, 2 months ago. We just moved down from up north. And I want to be more connected to my Judaism. I wanted to attend a synagogue. And my mom said, you know, now that dad is gone, we're on a tighter budget. Most synagogues demand membership. They only want your money. And I put my thoughts and hopes to the side. But now that I see you, a rabbi, standing on the corner, could you help me? Is there a synagogue that I could get more involved with?" I said, "Of course. You could attend Chabad. Services are tonight at 7 p.m. And you could say Kaddish for your father." He said, "I'll be there tonight." When a teenager says that he'll be there at 7 p.m., you could expect him at no p.m. or no a.m. I was very shocked when indeed Mitchell came into the synagogue Friday night, 7 p.m. together with his mother and younger sibling. He is now a leader in our teen network, helping spread Yiddishkeit among the many teenagers in Spanish River. And I feel I speak in the name of all my fellow shluchim. And as my father mentioned, the excitement of the impact you could have and encourage, like Rabbi Vovosky mentioned, we don't have to be at every opportunity. But if we won't be there, then who will be there? Who will be able to be impactful in a situation where only you could be impactful, if not us? and answer that this is too hard or too out of my comfort zone, maybe it's worth it to go a little bit out of our own comfort zones to be able to be a provider for others for Yiddishkeit. And if someone says, well, it's not my business, it's their lives. The Rebbe once compared that to a burning fire. If someone's house is on fire, would you say, it's not my business, it's not my home, I'll just, I don't want to interfere? No, you would feel every effort to save that fire. And so too with the spiritual fire of so many of our friends. A lot of us on this Zoom are perhaps much more suited to impact Yidden and Boca Raton than the rabbis. If a rabbi would come, they would probably say, "Ay vey, what does he want? How is he going to nudge me?" But if you say, "I'm going to shul, would you like to come along with me? I'm going to hear the shofar, would you like to come? I have a mezuzah in my home. Do you need one for your home?" That perhaps would be even more impactful than even if a rabbi would approach them. So I encourage all of you, find that opportunity that is waiting for you to shine, to be impactful and bring the Rebbe's message to another Jew in Boca Raton who we rabbis have not been successful to reach, and Hashem is waiting for you to make it happen. Thank you for joining, and I really feel honored of speaking on the night of the Rebbe's yahrzeit. And I hope that the lessons we take will impact not only tonight and today, but for the rest of the year, and truly make our community great and greater until we see Mashiach. May it happen speedily in our days. Amen. I would now like to introduce a theme that we just spoke about how every one of us could take a leading role in making an impact. Sorry, were you able to hear me before? I would like to now introduce the next video of the similar theme of how every single person could be a leader, as told by the former chief rabbi of the United Kingdom, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs.
Nach Fahidne sich jedurf dem Wort von dem Baal Shem Tov. Kisiya Atem Eretz Chefetz, jeder Ried befragt, wird geglichen zu Eretz Chefetz zu Ort.
So I bought a Greyhound bus ticket for $100 and I went off to look for America. I went around the States meeting many, many rabbis of all kinds. And eventually I got to see the Rebbe in a meeting that changed my life. I asked the Rebbe my questions, the questions of a young sophomore student. He got through them quite rapidly, and that was the extraordinary moment when he suddenly did a role reversal. My questions ended, and his questions began. How many Jewish students were there at Cambridge? How many came along to the Jewish Society? We estimated in those days that we were losing 90% of our Jewish students who were just drifting away. And the Rebbe started saying, "And what are you doing about it?" And I really didn't expect this because I never saw myself as a leader or somebody involved in as it were, reaching out. And I suddenly realized the Rebbe was challenging me to go and lead.
Sie wird angerufen Eretz Chefetz, der Fall was innewenig kriegen, a Wohnung Tevis und Margolies. Sie liegt ab Mayim Chayim. Sie liegen Kamo Eitzes, was seine Gonus bemavi ho Adomo.
The Rebbe taught me something very important, that the most transformative moments in your life happen when somebody else believes in you more than you believe in yourself.
Der Unterschied in uns, da bei ihnen, was gefühlen sich Korriv. Zu dem Ebersflag, bemehle darf ein bisschen agrobter. gefinden gleich dem Even Tevo, gefinden gleich dem Mayim Chaim. Sie da a Seine, was mir darf groben tiefer und noch tiefer, kdei a Robzunehmen mit alle Unionen, Hamalim und Mastiri.
Hi, everyone. Watching that video with Rabbi Sachs, Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, my takeaway from the video is something that I always felt so strongly whenever learning the Rebbe's Torah, learning the Rebbe's teachings, and just in general, the Chabad philosophy. And that is, Rabbi Sachs, he's just a college student, somebody who the Rebbe, you would think, doesn't need anything from. And he's coming with questions. And the Rebbe is taking his time to answer it and to put interest and invest in him. And this was not just for Jonathan Sachs, this was for every individual. The Rebbe's love and care and concern for every single person was evident in everything that the Rebbe did. You see this most, I believe, in as Chabad grew. In the beginning, you were able to do yechidus, you were able to do private audiences with the Rebbe, but eventually that was not feasible anymore. And you saw this in dollars. The Rebbe would spend hours and hours, even for just a moment, with thousands of Jews every single Sunday. And there's a famous story. Somebody once asked, I believe a woman asked the Rebbe, how is it that you're able to stand for so long? The Rebbe wasn't a young man at this time. How are you able to stand for so long and give out dollars? And I don't know if it's known, but the Rebbe actually would sometimes have to put his hand in an ice bucket afterwards. That's how much the physical strenuous it was. So this woman asked, how are you able to do it? And the Rebbe said, somebody, when they're a diamond jeweler, when they're counting diamonds, do they ever get tired? No, you never get tired of counting diamonds. And this is how the Rebbe viewed every single person. Personally, I was very young. I was only 3 years old when Gimel Tammuz happened, when the Rebbe passed on. However, we grew up with so many stories. My grandfather, Rabbi Bucket Sr., that is, Rabbi Bucket's father, my grandfather, Rabbi Chaim Meir Bucket, he used to go for the summer. My grandmother and my grandfather used to go for the summer to upstate New York to camp. And my grandfather was Shabbos. I think my grandmother would stay in camp and he would come to New York, I guess to hear the Farbrangens was the main reason. Rabbi Bucket, you'll correct me if I get any of the details wrong. Anyhow, after Shabbos, or right after Shabbos, the Rebbe, when my grandfather came by the Rebbe said, "This is for your wife, for a refuah shlema." He hadn't spoken to his wife over Shabbos. He didn't know of any refuah shlema needed. Right away, when he got home, he called. My grandmother had got bitten by a spider or some sort of venomous animal and had an incident over Shabbos. And the Rebbe's attention to every single detail, to every single person, no matter who they were, whether they were the Rosh Hashiva like my grandfather or anybody, was just astounding and something that is a lesson for all of us. This is what the Rebbe's teaching was for us, that we should pay attention to every person that crosses our paths, that we should have care and devotion for everybody that we come in contact with. And this is what I strive. The reason why, one of the reasons why I did, and my wife Shana decided to join in the Rebbe's shluchus, in the Rebbe's mission, was that this is something that we want to impart into our children. This importance of every single person, every single opportunity being important and needing of attention. And we just can hope and that we live up to the expectations that the Rebbe had for us, for all of us, and we fulfill this mission. I'd like to introduce my fellow shliach at Chabad of Central Boca, Rabbi Arla Gupin, to continue this discussion.
Thank you, Rabbi Kramer. So I want to share a story. When I was a yeshiva boy, they start us out very young. People ask you, why did you become a rabbi? Right? We never knew any different. From a very young age, whenever you had spare time, whenever we had spare time, we went out to offices to visit people. We went out to help different Chabads around the country. So I was once in a small town in the south, and the Chabad rabbi there shared a story with me. At that time, he moved into town, and the local federation wasn't very excited that there was another synagogue opening up. And some of the rabbis were a little bit more adamant that he shouldn't be moving down. Some of them were less. One of the rabbis, to put it mildly, that was very adamantly against him being there was one of the Reform rabbis in town. And when it came up at a federation meeting, he said, these rabbis, these Chabad rabbis, are fanatical. Why are they so fanatical? Because they're literally obsessed. They have this borderline obsession with the Rebbe. How do I know that? Walk into the rabbi's house, he has a picture of the Rebbe hanging up in his living room. So it's beautiful. A lot of people are big fans of different rabbis. They speak about them, but it's fanatical to have a picture of a rabbi up in your living room. That was this Reform rabbi's claim. So before I get to the end of that story, what is it about this, in this Reform rabbi's words, this obsession with the Rebbe? Why do you even need a Rebbe? What is a Rebbe? Is the Rebbe somebody, what makes a good Jewish leader? Is it someone with vision, someone with ambition, with smarts, wisdom, humility, kindness, someone who can perform miracles, someone who can have prophetic visions? What is it that makes a Rebbe? So the truth is, this is a question that has been asked throughout the ages. This Reform rabbi wasn't the first one. The Misnagdim, it was the opponents of the Hasidic movement from when the Hasidic movement began. They opposed Hasidus. They said, what is a Rebbe? Who needs a Rebbe? But the truth is, it goes even further back than that. In this week's Torah portion, you have the parsha of Korach. Korach was a cousin of Moses, and he said, who made you a leader? Why are you a Rebbe? The entire Jewish people is holy. Madua tisnasu. Why are we putting one person up on a pedestal and making him a Rebbe? So this is an age-old question. What is a Rebbe, and why do we need a Rebbe? So if we're asking the question from Korach's view, let's look at Moses. Moses was the first Jewish leader, and in fact, he was the greatest Jewish leader of all time. What made Moses Moses? There's no question. He had great qualities, great character traits. Moses was the most humble of men that ever lived. The Torah tells us this black and white. He was one of the greatest men that ever lived. Is that what makes a Jewish leader? So in introducing us to Moshe, the Torah tells us Moshe Hayareya. Moses was a shepherd. That was the one quality that the Torah tells us when they're introducing us to Moses before the story. He was a shepherd. What is a shepherd? Someone who takes care of his flock. A shepherd is someone who takes care of his flock. Yes, you can have a whole bunch of different qualities. You can be wise. You can be able to literally work miracles. You can have prophecy. That isn't a leader. A leader is someone who cares. Moses cared for every single one of his flock, his literal flock and the figurative flock of the Jewish people. So much so, we see, if you look at other religions, what makes a leader great? He's very holy. He is connected to God. He's God's representative here on earth. You look at Judaism, in fact, the opposite's true. Moses wasn't God's representative to the Jewish people. Moses was the Jewish people's representative to God. How do we see that? When the Chet of the Chet Egel, when the sin of the golden calf happened, God said, that's it. I'm done with these people. I'm going to destroy them all. And now, you and your progeny are going to be my people. I'm done with the Jewish people. What did Moses say? Moses said, no, I'm not going to stand for that. And if you insist, this grand plan you have of me and my descendants becoming the new Jewish people, that's not going to work. I want to be erased from this whole book. If they're not part of the story, I'm not part of the story. So 1 minute, if the entire point of a great leader is that he's spiritual, he's a representative of God, he should have chosen God's side. But Moses wasn't here to be a representative of God. Moses was here to choose the Jewish people. He was our representative to God. He chose the Jewish people when it came to a choice between his spiritual greatness. The things he chose the Jewish people. A Jewish leader is someone who chooses his people above all else, above obviously his physical pursuits, but even above his spiritual pursuits. There's nothing greater than his caring for his people. And that really is what a Jewish leader is. And you see that by Moses, and you see that throughout history, again and again and again. Going back to the story of the rabbi in the south, he told this Reform rabbi, he said, yes, but it's not so fanatic. I do, in fact, have a picture of the rabbi up on my wall, but it isn't such a fanatical thing. Why? I have a question, dear rabbi. Do you have a picture of your grandparents up on your wall? He said, sure. He said, the Rebbe is my father. You have a picture of your grandfather up on your wall, and the Rebbe is my father. So what is this? Is this just a cute saying? The Rebbe is my father. He was trying to get out of trying to explain what Chabadniks will have a picture of the Rebbe up in their home. They say a story that somebody once came to the Rebbe's house to paint, and he asked the Rebbetzin, the Rebbe's wife, whether she was a Chabadnik. She asked, why are you asking? He said, listen, I know this is Crown Heights. I've been to many homes here, and most of the followers of the Rebbe have a picture of the Rebbe up on the wall, and I see that you don't. So she smiled, right? He didn't realize that he was actually in the Rebbe's house. The Rebbe himself obviously didn't have a picture up on his wall. So goes the story. So is this Chabad rabbi trying to get away and be, sort of cutesy? Yes, the Rebbe is my father. The answer is, this is what a Rebbe is. What is it about a parent? Is it their qualities? Yeah, when you're a 6-year-old kid, my daddy is the strongest. He's the smartest. When you're a little older and you're a teenager, maybe not so much. But eventually we realize that our parents, they may not have all the greatest characteristics. There may be other people, of the 9 billion people on the planet, that are greater than them, wiser than them, have more vision than them, more. But that's not what a parent is. A parent is someone who cares for you above all else. If they had to choose between their own happiness or sacrifice something in their life, whether it's their, whatever it may be, spirituals, whatever it may be, they would sacrifice anything for their children. That is a Rebbe. So when the Chabad Rebbe said, the Rebbe is my father, it's not just a cutesy saying. That is what a Rebbe is. Someone who cares for you above all else. Only a parent has that much caring, and with a parent, it's physical. With a Rebbe, it's more spiritual. It's physical as well. The Rebbe would obviously answer questions pertaining to everybody's material issues as well, but that is what a Rebbe is. And that's something that Kurach didn't understand, the Misnag didn't understand, and this Reform rabbi in the South didn't understand. A Rebbe is someone who cares. A child can say, what do I need a parent for? There are smarter people out there. There are greater people out there. If you want to fulfill your potential, you want someone to nurture you as a young child, that you can grow to maximize your potential of who you are, you need a healthy home. You need someone to look out for you, that their primary concern in life, above all else, even above their own concerns, is you. And the same goes spiritually. If you want to grow spiritually, if you want to connect to God, you need a Rebbe. You need a parent figure. You need someone who's going to look out for you above all else. What is a Rebbe? A Rebbe is a parent that above all else cares for you. It's not about the characteristics. Yes, the Rebbe was wise. Yes, he had vision. Yes, there were miracles. All of that is true. But above all else, the Rebbe cared for every single Jew, period. So I want to introduce the next video. The next video is a story is a song sung by the Rebbe. You don't actually hear the words, but the words to this song, many times in the Hasidic tradition, the Hasidim would take a Russian song from the army that they enjoyed, and they would sort of plagiarize the song, if you will, if they liked the song, and use it for Hasidic purposes, for Jewish purposes. This song is a song the Russian army would sing: through fire, through water, we'll go through anything, whatever it takes. And the Hasidim loved this message of self-sacrifice. We'll do whatever it takes to help another Jew, to do another mitzvah. So somewhat in the theme of what we're speaking about, that a Rebbe does whatever it takes and imparts to his Hasidim to do whatever it takes to use these same qualities, to care for everybody else, which is what the Shluchim around the world do and what the Rebbe impacted everybody in the world to do, through fire, through water, through whatever it takes, sacrifice. And we'll watch this video right now.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you perfectly.
So I haven't seen anyone yet say L'chaim, but I definitely have had a head start on you if you have. So I'll give you a chance to catch up right now. I actually just came on from Farbrangen with students from Mayonot. And so L'chaim to all of you, L'chaim, L'chaim, L'brocha. The Alter Rebbe, the founder of Chabad, had a colleague, a fellow student of the Maggid of Mezrich, who came to be known as the Volfar, which means the fallen one, because he unfortunately became an alcoholic and spent his years in bars in a perpetually drunken stupor with small intervals of sobriety in between. But he was known, even in his drunken state, to sometimes repeat teachings of the Maggid. On one occasion, Chassidim met this fallen one, this Volfer, in one of his brief moments of times of lucidity and sobriety, and asked him to repeat a teaching of the Maggid. And he went on to repeat a teaching of the Maggid in the most beautiful, articulate way. And they were stunned. They said, you spent all these years in bars, and yet you are able to repeat the teachings of the Maggid so well. So he said to them the following. He said, listen here. There was once a man who suffered from forgetfulness. Maybe it was dementia, before they had the term dementia. Every night, he would forget every morning where his clothes were placed. So every night before he went to sleep, he would write on a note where his pants are, where his shirt is, where his jacket is. So he should be reminded. Do you think, asked the fallen one to the Chassidim, do you think that he had to write a note as to where his head was? That he didn't have to do. Why? Because the head is his very self. So he said to them, see, the difference between me and you is that your study of Chassidus, of Chassidic teachings, is like academic. And so you're liable to forget it. I was brought up and I was trained to believe and to know and to sense that the Rebbe is our head, and the head you don't forget. It's the essence, it's part of the essence of your very being. So in Gimel Tammuz today, this yahrzeit, we don't come together to recall, because you don't have to recall that which is not forgotten. What we come to do is to embrace the reality of the Rebbe that is. The only way to account for the phenomenon of what has transpired in the last 26 years is a Rebbe whose presence is so palpable, is so real, is so impactful. And I want to share with you on a personal note, unlike Rabbi Gopin, who always dreamed of being a rabbi, I did not share those aspirations as a young child growing up in Australia. I, for one, had two aspirations. One was to be a rock star. The other was to be a professional athlete. No, the rock star, I got a little bit of live out my fantasy, just a little bit, putting out an album. Athlete wasn't possible. But that was my life until I came to the Rebbe. First time I came was 13 years old. It was Purim. That was my first foray into this world. But what was really life-changing for me, when I really drank the Kool-Aid, was when I came back the following year at 14 years old and spent Tishrei, the holiday season, with the Rebbe, and witnessed the absolute living embodiment of everything that I had learned about unfold before my eyes. And I was going to give you one example. On Rosh Hashanah, it says, on the new year, the fate of the world is determined, and the fate of every Jew is determined. And you know, when you saw the Rebbe walk into shul on Rosh Hashanah morning, you could absolutely see that narrative on his face. You could see Rosh Hashanah was in his face. Rosh Hashanah is also about us crowning God as the sovereign of the universe. And when I stood there for the first time hearing the Rebbe blow the shofar, it suddenly occurred to me, this is actually happening right now. The coronation of God over the universe is happening right here, right now. It's so real. And when you saw the Rebbe walk into shul on Rosh Hashanah with his secretaries with bags and bags of letters of blessings from Jews from all over the world, and then the Rebbe placed it on the bima in front of him, and before he started to blow the shofar, threw his talus over these thousands of letters and cried, and you could hear the Rebbe sobbing under his talus. You saw, this is the fate of the world. It's happening right here before your eyes. And here is the great champion of the Jewish people. Here is the great interceder of the Jewish people. Life-changing. Life-changing. Everything that I believed and everything that I knew, witnessing the Rebbe, was no longer academic. This is real. It's not just faith, it's real. The Rebbe is the embodiment of the reality and the truth of godliness and of Torah and everything we believe in. That's why we need a leader. And that's why the Rebbe continues to inspire. You cannot go to places like Ghana, sub-Saharan Africa, or remote places in Asia, or start a Chabad house in Chaz, in the new autonomous region in Seattle. All these places in Russia that no one's ever heard of. We joke that at the Chabad convention every year, they make up the names of new countries. Like, who knows the difference anyway? And you ask all these guys, what drives you? And they all say, it's the Rebbe. That's not a Rebbe of 26 years ago. There's not enough fuel in the tank from 26 years ago to motivate people to sacrifice their lives for another Jew. That is an energy that is present. That is an energy that is palpable. That is an energy that is real. So Gimel Tammuz is two things. On the one hand, the physical absence of the Rebbe leaves us over the gaping hole, especially those who witnessed the Rebbe, no doubt about it. But Gimel Tammuz forces us all to up our game and to realize that the spiritual is as real. In fact, it's even more real than the physical. And we don't have to speculate as to how real spiritual power and energy is, because we see it empirically. We see it factually. Just to be an objective observer of the phenomenon of the Rebbe's increasing influence and impact on the world, this is not something from yesteryear. This is now. This is here. This is present. So Gimel Tammuz is a time to reaffirm our connection and our responsibility to be the agents and the ambassadors that the Rebbe wants us all to be. And to realize that we need leadership, as Rabbi Goldman touched on, Korach's contention. I find it's amazing how Gimel Tammuz always coincides with the Torah portion of Korach that's all about the contention and the notion that leadership is not necessary. And God said, as much as I created night and day, and the divisions between night and day is the necessity for leadership, because leaders raise us, leaders inspire us, leaders inform us, leaders empower us. That's what Gimel Tammuz is, to realign, to reaffirm, to reconnect to the Rebbe's energy, to light up our lives and to inspire others with that light, because it is the Rebbe's leadership that is going to lead the world to the finish line, to the ultimate redemption. And in the next video segment, I didn't see the entire thing, but the Rebbe touches on this idea of memories are not just about nostalgia, it's about implementation, and it's about concretization, and it's about lighting up the world with the spiritual energy and the holiness of the Rebbe. May the Rebbe continue to bless all of us and all of you with everything that you need, material and spiritual. And most of all, to realize that we are all ambassadors and nobody is exempt. We are all players. None of us are fans. None of us are observers of life. We are all in it. And we're in it to win it, to bring Mashiach. May Mashiach come now. L'chaim.
Schas me hertaza, in nide kavone, am soll Herrn allein, nur von dem Herrn soll werden ab der Herrn. Ad dem Sipur oder der Linien soll nicht nur Herrn beschmier Bialmo, nur soll sein Asamin Herrn, wo er soll bringen zu überleben. Und leide Meimer von der Mischne am meiste Huhoiker, als das soll machen nach Chino ja Nenderung bei einer Gehe zu meiste BP. Diese nach Neffen, als der Sikorn der Monnesach, was hat demol getroffen bei Yomi Maheim bis man Hase. I das nicht a Sach, was sie gewählen ma Freya Amor, nur das ist a Linie, was ist alleine gehe und der Pfarr macht das anders, sein Leben, bei einer Gehe zu Miker, bei einer Gehe le Meise BP. Bei jeder Menschen, Allahas Kame bekame bei Iden, die verstandig an der Rikere bei ihm den Nischomel und der Gufe mehr nicht wie ein Toffel. Wo der Funde sechet verstandig, als Bischass mit verbindet uns und mit der Herz, und mir vernimmt sich mit der Sache, was nimmt seine Schomme von dem Herren. Und das nimmt sich tegen genommen, und das nimmt tegen die Schomme von Baal, Hagiulo, und das ist die Sache, was verbindet sie zusammen. Und wie bald das ist verbunden mit einer Schomme, steht das Hecher von den Begrenzungen von Zman und Mokim, von Zeit und Ort. Der neue Reger kann das Mischane sein, bis er viele Mehapper sein, überkehren, Mina Kotze, La Kotze, ist mit einem Wort und mit einem Tnu und ein neuer Reger, der weckt mir nur seine Schomme, bis man es wird, Schalheves, Ebo, Meileho. Sie hebt on flackern der Ner Hawaii, nicht mal so, was sie da bei jeder Rieden. Er macht lichtig bei sich in seine Dalle Dames und er Chelke Bohema. Und bei sein ganzer Nebeis, bei der ganzen Sprache. Bei Eber nur ein Baal Spoi in dem ganzen Kreis, wo es Gott Spoi. Bis wann das in Zusammenstellen wird von der alle kleinen Lichterlein a größer Avuko, was bald die letzte Regoyen von Golus
I would like to thank everybody for coming tonight. I would like to thank all the rabbis that participated, all the Chabad rabbis that participated. And I believe we should take the Rebbe's message that he just gave us, start to light the light. Start to light even a small candle in our lives. And together we'll make a great avuka, a great fire. And let us hope that we'll celebrate very soon together with the coming of Mashiach. And together with the Rebbe, we'll be together in Artzeinu Akdosh, the Holy Land, B'mheira b'yameinu mamash, speedily in our days. I wish you all a good night, and thanks for participating in this wonderful event.
Thanks for doing the video.
Thank you. Shkoyach, rabbis.
Yes, I'd like to thank you for planning all these videos.
Are we staying for Farbrangen?
Rabbi Nu is ready, drinking ready. I'm available.
By the way, I do want to make mention that while we had all these wonderful words of inspiration, as you just heard from the Rebbe's last video, whoever, it would be an appropriate time and an opportune time for everybody to take on a small hachlata resolution, whether it's adding some learning online. You can catch so much from a minute to 2 minutes to 5 minutes of inspiration from the Rebbe and gleanings from Chabad.org. And I'm going to also take a lead from my fellow Shliach Rabbi Nu and say L'chaim on such a night.
Okay, I'm going to have to do that too.
You got a lot of catching up to do, but
He left. I was going to say hello to him.
I have a very big cup.
He left.
L'chaim, rabbis, have one for me. I'm driving. I can't do it.
L'chaim, everybody.
L'chaim, save some for me.
L'chaim, thank you.
No, he does. Could be. That was.
L'chaim, good night. Thank you.
I'm the Pinchas.
It was very, very special, I must say.
We can leave.
Gary, no picture
Yes,
of
sir.
you.
What's that?
We don't get to see a video of you, a picture.
I don't think so. I don't know how.
There's something on your bottom that says stop video, start.